All right, my friends, I found a winner with the TSP bucket strategy, but there's a huge caveat. So a significant but that goes with it. And you can see Miss Betsy over there. Smells my hair, smells good, right, Betsy? Smells like a Suave for men, or what? Suave? 2-in-1 for men. So not only smells good, but it cleans your hair nice and soft and smelly. So yes, Betsy, smells good. All right, so a couple things I want to focus on here is I got some folks say, what about RMDs? This is irrelevant at this point because you're taking the cash out. Essentially, you're going to take more than the withdrawals required from RMDs. And so just don't sweat the RMD stuff. If there comes an RMD that's more than the cash withdrawals, we're going to have to take it out. But that doesn't mean you have to spend it. I do find a lot people say I have to take required distributions. That means I'm not reinvesting. You can certainly reinvest it, you just can't reinvest it back in that specific IRA or portfolio. So it just don't get caught up in that because we're doing this gross of taxes anyway. We're just saying we have X amount of dollars. We're trying to take Y amount out. How long would this last in real world scenarios? That's all we're trying to do. So don't sweat the RMD stuff because again, if we want to go down that road, which we should, we got to look at taxes for sure. And secondly, you got to say, well, just because I'm pulling it from my account doesn't mean RMDs are being avoided. They're just not. They're absolutely. I mean, just think about it. The first year of RMDs are 3.6. Next year is 3.78. Next year is 3.9. So we're well above the RMD place. You can't worry about that. It's not an issue. Seemed like something else. I forgot about the other. It seemed like someone else had mentioned something. I can't remember, but all right. So don't sweat the RMDs. We're not doing taxes. I guess that's it. So in this case, again, we're starting with. I think we got $100,000. We have enough saved in savings account to draw our that years of income. Right. So we've already covered this. So we're retiring in 31 December 1997. We have $100,000 in our portfolio. We have $6,000 of income already established that we need. All right, hold on just a second. My wife is getting ready to fly back home from the UK. So she's flying back to the great state of Georgia. So I'm excited to see her. It's been 10 days without my wife and I hadn't seen my daughter, Maddie, who's in school out there, but my other daughter, Chloe's with Charlotte. So looking forward to seeing them come home. I guess I got to clean this house up. Yikes. Ooh, boys will be boys. All right. So we started, it's really just sequence of returns risk. I mean, that's the issue that comes into it. And I showed you yesterday where if you retired in I think we started with 1988 because that's when the TSP started. You were fine at 6%. You no worries at all. You crushed it, to quote Gary Vaynerchuk and James Altucher. If you retired in 2000, you did not crush it. Is all there is to it. So all right, let's dive into this, my friends, and then so we got to, again, it's going to be good, and then we're going to show you the big caveat. So here again, if we start in 1988, and you can see we kicked butt and took names. We had 514,000 left in the C fund, 14,000 left in the G fund, and 41,000 left in the G fund. So that's great. But then we started in 2000. I said, okay. So remember, the decade of 2000 was the first 3 years, the stock market was down big time. 9, 12, and 22%. That sequence of return risk right there. Then you seem to recover, and all of a sudden, kaboom! October 2007 to March 9th of 2009 hit, and that whole decade is what we call the lost decade. So the idea would be if you can survive that, you can survive anything. That's the idea. And I agree with that to some extent, but I'll share with you why that's not necessarily the case here in just a few minutes. But if you can survive the lost decade of 2000, you're in a pretty good shape. Secondly, I think a lot of people get way overwhelmed, like, oh, but you didn't survive then. And all right, what's the likelihood of that decade happening again as per what it did? And the answer is none. There is no likelihood. Even Bill Bengen, when he did his 4% rule, never would have predicted the 2000 decade. He would not have predicted it unless that 4% rule in of itself, you just got to challenge that from the get-go, just because any rule of thumb out there is going to be only as strong as the previous years we can study. But it has nothing to do going forward because the forward is all that matters. So you just always got to keep that in the back of your mind. So in my opinion, yes, you start with something, but you got to be nimble enough to adjust. All right. So in this case, I got 2 years cash. So we got $100,000. We got $12,000. 2 years cash. That's what I was going to say. a couple of people pointed out, yeah, don't sell the portfolio when the markets are down. Just live off your cash. I agree with that 100%. So in this case, instead of moving money back from the C fund into the G fund, and when the markets are down to replenish it, we're just essentially going to spend all of our cash, and then we're just going to go focus solely on the C fund. So in this case, we got 2 years of cash, which means we're not tapping into the C fund for the first 2 years when they get down. And so we're spending the $12,000 will be exhausted by year 3. Year 3, then we're just taking it solely from the C fund. Does that make sense? So in this case, we have 2 years that cover us for the initial sequence of returns. And then in year 3, we're just relying on the C fund to get the job done. And remember, the C fund is the S&P 500. Unfortunately, because of the 6% withdrawals, that didn't last either. So we ran out of money in year 2012. So it worked until 12 years. Well before you were dead. All right, so with 2 years, again, so now we're not moving cash we're not taking distributions from the C fund to replenish the G fund. We're just saying we're going to have the G fund to cover us for the first 2 years, and then that's it. In the case, you obviously got a couple $100, but in this case, we ran out of money in 2012 because, again, look at that. The hammer of 2008 it destroyed us. I mean, look at that. We got hammered in 2008, and that ruined us. All right, so now I said, okay, what if we have 2 years of cash and we're taking $5,000 distributions? So now we only got $10,000 of cash and $90,000 in the C fund because we're taking $5,000 distributions, adjusting it with real live inflation. That should be better, right? Well, no. So it survives longer, but it survives until right here, 2017, and then we ran out of money. So again, the first 2 years we were fine. We got covered for the first 2 years. With our cash, we're able to avoid those significant declines. But then after that, we're just getting crunched. All right. So after that, we're down to $50,000 in the C fund after taking the distribution of $5,400. We're able to kind of recoup, and then boom, 2008, we went from $57,000 down to 29, basically $30,000. We basically lost half our portfolio. And we'd never recuperate. But that did last a lot longer. So it did last until 2017, so a full 17 years. But if we're looking at your life expectancy, 17 years isn't enough. We need to look at probably 25 years. So that's not good enough. So then I said, okay, what if we did 3 years cash? So maybe what we can do is instead of taking, in this case, we want to avoid taking a mass distribution in 2002 from the C fund, when the market's already hammered us twice, but now we're also on top of that going to take a mass distribution, plus the market is down another 22%. So what if we did that? So in this case, again, we're trying to avoid the sequence of return risk at all for the C fund. So we're trying to avoid taking money out of the portfolio when the market is down. And so I got 3 years of cash, and I'm still taking 6% distribution. So I'm going back up. So we're putting $18,000 in cash and only $82,000 in a C fund. And then again, that lasted until 2013. So a little bit better, even with a 6%. But again, looks like at the end of 2003, we're sitting on 65,000, or end of 2002. End of 2003, we're sitting on $51,000, and we recuperated it until 2008 again, and then we just got walloped, and we're like, oh. So it looked like we're back on track. All right, at the end of 2007, we're back up to $51,000, which is where we were at the end of 2003. And we're thinking all is good in the hood. And then 2008 came around, and we were just kaput. And so we ran out of money here in 2013. All right, so then I said, what if we had 4 years of cash with 6% distributions? All right, so here we're just taking it fully from. So we got $24,000 in cash, $76,000 in stocks. We have 4 years of cash with 6% distributions again. So we're not pulling anything from the portfolio until year 4. All right, so yeah, year 4. We're not pulling anything from the portfolio until year 4. And then we actually have enough cash where we can take, in 2008, we didn't even have to take the money out of the stock, the C fund. We can still take it from the G fund because we have enough cash left over. And so in this case, I said, how would that work? So 4 years of cash with 6% distributions, and we still run out of money. All right, we ran out of money in 2014. So it looked pretty good, but the facts are we had even though we weren't taking anything out when the markets declined in 2000, 2001, and 2, and then again 2008, the fact that the market declined so violently anyway, we just didn't have enough to keep up with inflation with a 6% distribution rate. So then I did 4 years, but I'm thinking I'm onto something. This goes back to my barbell strategy. I'm telling you, this reconfirmed my barbell strategy using the TSP. So now I got 4 years of cash, and we're only taking 5.5 out, 5.5% distribution, or 55% or 5,500 a year. And here our money lasts until 2016, so 16 years. So that looked pretty good. So far, this was 2016. I think up here, the 5%. Lasted until 2017. Yeah, so 5% with 2 years of cash lasted 2017. 6% or 5.5% with 4 years of cash lasted until 2016. So both are okay, but neither are we can write home about. All right, so then I want to say, was going to pass on that for just a second. Now I say, what if we have 3 years of cash and 5.5% distribution? It's hard to follow this, I get this, but at the end of the day, that ran out of money too. All right, so we have 5.5% distribution. It's just too much. 6% distribution is too much. Even no matter how much cash you got in there, 3 years or 4 years, it's just too much distribution when you're retiring into a down market. That last decade swamped us. So the winning strategy was 4 years of cash and a 5% distribution. And so what we have here is we have $20,000 in cash because we're taking $5,000 a year from the portfolio, which means we have $80,000 left in our C fund. And what we'll see is we're going to take out the cash, you're going to take out the cash, you're going to take out the cash until we're going to take it from CAT or the G fund until the market is up. So we're not touching the portfolio, the C fund, I should say, and only if the market is ever down. If the market is up, we're always touching. If the market is down, we're always taking the cash out from the G fund. If the market is down, we're taking the cash from the G fund. If the market's up, we're taking cash from the C fund. And because we're only taking 5% a year, what you'll see is we survive. We have $10,000 by year 2018. Now, that's nothing to write home about because within the next year we're probably broke. All right, so basically this will last for 20 years. But that is the one thing that can survive. That I just proved it survived for 19 years, from 2000 to 2018. That's 19 years where you still had money left over, adjusting each and every year with inflation. The likelihood of you retiring into this scenario is quite small too, because don't forget, 2000, 2001, 2002, 9, 12, 22% respectively. 2008, 37% down. So it's just that decade is nuts. We got hammered, and that is not likely to happen again. So this looked pretty good. It's pretty comfortable with this 4 years cash, 5% distribution rate. Never taking it from the C fund unless there's a up year. And that survived. it did. It literally survived until today with some money left over, but that will be exhausted by year 20, which is, I'm pretty comfortable with that, frankly, just because A, you're not likely to retire in the scenario. B, your spending is going to go down anyway, but still. But then I said, okay, that's all good. And my man Richard had sent me, I think it's Richard, I forgot about Portfolio Visualizer at portfoliovisualizer.com. And it doesn't allow me quite the same structure I like to use, but it's freaking awesome. This is a great backtest tool. The drawback is it doesn't backtest it as far as I'd like, but this right here is a perfect example. So what we're doing is we're going to take $100,000. All right, we're going to put 75% in the U.S. stock market and 25% in 10-year Treasury because it doesn't allow you to do specific mutual funds that go back this far. And we're starting with 1973. I'll pause to see if anyone wants to take a gander why we're starting in 1973. Put it in the show notes. All right, so Alex Trebek, your old buddy Josh, and old Betsy there says, what do we say? Answer, please? Okay. The reason because that was the start of a bear market. So 73 and 74, the markets got crushed. That's just a fact. And what we're doing here is we want to take money out, withdraw a fixed amount. We're going to take 5,000 out, and we're going to adjust it with inflation. So we're taking $100,000 out. We have a $100,000 initial portfolio. 75% we're putting U.S. stocks, which includes small caps, by the way, which from 76 to 83, I think, something like that. They smoked large caps, so that was a good feather in our cap, which we would not have known in hindsight. But still, I'm going to use it. And I'm going to show you why this is the caveat. And we're going to adjust 5%, 5,000 adjusted with inflation every year, and we're not going to rebalance. No rebalancing. So we're just going to let the markets do as it does, and we can always revisit this if we want.
And then you have the 10-year Treasury, which essentially is the G fund or the or intermediate government bond fund. So let's take a gander, shall we? And it's going to be ugly. At least one of the portfolios did not survive. In fact, neither of them did. And what you can see here, if we go to portfolio annual returns, is that by 1992, we were flat broke. We had no money left. Our portfolio one had $0 left. So even though we're only taking 5% a year out and adjusting it for inflation, the facts are that inflation back then was so high, it just not only did our stocks get hammered, but the inflation eat us alive. And so look, the 10-year Treasury is only paying 3.25 roughly. It's 1974 is paying 4. And the 10-year Treasury did not keep up with the rate of inflation. And on top of that, our portfolio returns getting hammered. So in the first 5 years, our portfolio got smoked. Inflation killed us, and our bonds did not rescue us at all. And so because of that, we ran out of money in basically 20 years. The inflation, my friends, is the bugaboo. There's no other way around that. This is the problem when it comes to your safe assets. I mean, here's a safe asset. 10-year Treasury is a safe asset. It's government guaranteed. It will give you an increasing rate of return relative to interest. And here it didn't. And the reason, it did, but it didn't keep up with inflation. And don't forget, you still got to pay tax on this too. And I'm not quite doing that, but inflation, not only did it kill the stock portfolio, look at that. We were down 21% net of inflation in the first year and another 40% the second year. That's horrific. That's just on the stock. Well, that's on the stock. Yeah, that's on everything because the portfolio return plus the inflation. So you just can't recoup from that. And the saving grace of the 10-year Treasury just was a pittance relative to what we're seeking. Now, in 1982, the 10-year Treasury gave us 39%, but we only had $65,000 left in the portfolio. So if we say, okay, what if we did instead of a 10-year Treasury, what if we did, a total bond market? It's just not going to be much difference. Watch. So this is corporate and government bonds. Same thing we're doing there. Oh, actually, I'm surprised. Let's see what we got here. In this case, we did survive. Interesting, because so the 10-year Treasury is what was the. Look at that. So the U.S. bond that's from '87. Oh, geez, Louise. Why is it? Oh, because the U.S. bonds only go back to '87. Shoot. I don't want that. That's not all right. So scratch what I just said. That sucks. What if we did long Treasury? So scratch that that didn't. That only goes back to 1978. So we don't have enough time. I was gonna say there's no way the corporate bond thing would have done that well. Let's do cash though, because the corporate bonds would have got hammered just like everything else did in 1973 and 4. All right, so cash, because cash should have given us more returns, I would think, than the Treasury, because the short-term ones. Yeah, look at that cash. Yeah, cash did much better. We still ran out of money though. So inflation is what eat us alive. What if we did not inflate this? No, I don't. What if we didn't inflate it and give us $6,000 a year? You got to inflate it, man. Just if you don't inflate it, I guess we could say, well, we're not going to inflate it because our spending will go down as we get older. And that lasted. If we didn't inflate it, it did last, which inherently makes sense. So we had a 1.8 million without inflating it, but this, that 5,000 a year after inflation of these, it's not going to buy much, man. In fact, I think this gives us a chance to even show you on an inflation adjusted base here. Maybe it doesn't. There was a place you could show it on inflation adjusted to show you what here we go. Let's do it. Yeah, I think this is it right there, inflation adjusted. But I guess it doesn't show you the drawdowns. All right. Yeah, so inflation adjusted, that's $300,000. So still pretty good, but I guess it doesn't show you the inflation adjusted drawdowns. With distributions, just $6,000 a year. All right, so let me just wrap this up. So what I'm going to do is why am I intrigued by this? Because I guess it's the mathematician in me, which I'm not one, or the engineer. I'm always looking for that. There's got to be a silver bullet. And I don't know. The silver bullet's not to have any debt. Is all there is to it. It's got to be the silver bullet not to have any debt. Or, to be honest, like my man Sergio said, you could withdraw what do you say, $8,500 from your reverse mortgage for 30 years on a $300,000 home. So I'm gonna incorporate that here as we go forward. But what we came up with here with the TSP is that why we were able to survive that time frame of the first decade and in basically the second decade, you're lost, you're done. Because the sequence of return risk is horrific. No other way around that, and it killed us. You go back to 1973 and 74, inflation killed us, and then you start the year with a bad return. I mean, the whole point about this is you got to factor, what if you retired in 1973? What if you retired in 2000? What if you retired in 2008? Well, over the course of my life, I mean, I don't have my trusty calculator. That's 49 years. And so basically by the time 2000 came around, I had been around for, the old buddy Josh, been around for 40 years, right? 30 years. Yeah, sir, I've been around for 30 years. Of those, okay, let's use 2010. So by 2010 had rolled around, I had been on this earth for 40 years. Of those years, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of those 40, you would have retired into a bear market without question. 73, 74, 2000, 2001, 2002, and then 2008. So while not, significantly probable, hold on just a second. We're going to trade my trusty calculator. That's 15%. 15% of the decade previous would have retired in a pretty significant down year. And much of those times, you would have, the beginning part of that, you would have retired into a high inflationary year. And then secondly, the decade of the 2000, you would have retired into a pretty just doldrum year, even if it didn't go into one of those years specifically where you got hammered. The decade of 1980 and the decade of 2010 did well, but the decade of 70 did badly. The decade of 2000 did badly too. So 1990s did well, 80s did well, 2010 did well, those decades. So 1970 to 80, horrible. 2000, 2010, horrible. 1980, 1990, and 2010 did well. So the 5 decades your old buddy Josh has been on this earth, 2 of those did incredibly poorly. And so that's 40% of the time you could have been in a world of hurt. That's a risk you got to contend with for sure. Anyway, so that's why I do this. I'm just stream of consciousness. Stream of consciousness stuff. I'm just looking for the elixir. Is it the elixir or elixir? I can't remember how to pronounce it. I'm looking for that elixir, how we can solve this dilemma. And you can't, obviously, but the number one thing is to just make sure you have your mortgage paid. I just can't stress that enough, because a guy with the mortgage is enslaved to the mortgage. A guy without it can say, I'm downsizing, I'm selling, I'm tightening my belt. But if you got that mortgage, you can't tighten it. Anyway, more to come, so stay tuned. All right, don't forget to smash the like button, and we'll see you next time. Love to hear your comments too.